Long before human beings knew how to measure time by the sun or give a name to the darkness, this world already held things that human language is not sufficient to describe. From the primordial age, when the earth was still soft beneath the feet and the sky still hung like a thin curtain above, Allah had already set in motion within the universe laws that we can only sense on the very surface. We grow up surrounded by stories of prophets, of battles between truth and misguidance. Yet there are secrets that most of humanity has never fully heard. And on that mysterious map, there is one truth that makes anyone who hears it for the first time stop in amazement. In the flow of history, among civilizations that have disappeared, there are 4 prophets who did not die, but are still alive to this very day. Like invisible guardians scattered across the vast universe. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained. This story is not like any story you have heard before. It does not begin with war, and it does not end with victory. It begins with a secret that Allah placed in the very heart of human history, a secret that even the most learned scholars can only humbly admit that they know very little about. Because Allah sent down to earth more than 124,000 prophets. Each of them carried a fragment of light, a reminder, a mission entrusted from the unseen realm. That chain of missions, with all its pain and miracles, was brought to completion with the arrival of Muhammad, a man whose light pierced through both time and space. No one disputes that he is the final prophet. What very few people know is that after that chain of prophethood came to a close, Allah kept 4 prophets alive for purposes that only He fully understands. From the moment the universe began to turn, Allah created human beings and placed them in this world with a single task: to recognize their Creator. Yet human beings, no matter how intelligent, are always limited. We see far too little compared to what truly exists, and there are countless events unfolding behind an invisible veil that none of us can reach. That is why Allah sent prophets to each community, each generation, leading them out of the wounds of their time and bringing them back to the one truth. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. But when the era of the Prophet Muhammad ended, when revelation was completed, the world did not fall into a void. On the contrary, Allah kept 4 prophets alive, not as ancient relics of history, but as living witnesses standing between 2 worlds, carrying out tasks that human beings could never even imagine. What makes this truth so shocking is that we live in a reality where time seems to flow in only one direction, and death is seen as the final period at the end of every story. Yet for Allah, death is only a door. He closes it for some people, and He leaves it open for others. For the 4 prophets who are still alive, that door has never been shut. They do not live the way we live, and they do not exist the way we exist. One of them was raised into the heavens and will return at the exact moment when the world is in desperate need of His appearance. One of them was placed in a place where light and darkness meet, to guard something that only a very small number of souls are allowed to know. Another was taken into the layers of the heavens where angels come and go. And the last one lives in a state where life and worship blend into eternity. As you listen to this story, you will probably find yourself filled with questions. Where are they now? In what form do they exist? Why did Allah keep them alive? And what will happen when the final hour of this world arrives? Most of these questions remain in the majestic silence that Allah has stretched across the universe. Yet what we do know, through the Qur'an, through hadith, and through narrations passed down through many generations, is already enough to open a doorway that you will find very hard to forget once you have stepped through it. Because this is not only a religious story. This is a story about invisible threads that connect heaven and earth, that link what we know to what lies beyond the limits of human imagination. If this is the first time you have heard the truth that there are 4 prophets who are still alive, then prepare yourself, because the journey ahead will lead you into the deepest corners of sacred history, where truth and mystery intertwine as part of the fabric of the universe. If you love stories like this, and you want Prophetic History Explained to continue bringing you content that is profound and full of emotion, please subscribe to the channel so that we have more motivation to create the next episodes. Isa, the son of Maryam, is one of the central figures of sacred history, yet the truth about his fate has been misunderstood more than that of any other prophet. To understand the story of Isa, you must step away for a moment from the usual human way of thinking about death, about the limits of the body, and about the things we believe are certain. Because Isa is a living proof that the plan of Allah does not follow the logic that the human heart can measure. He came into this world under circumstances unlike anyone else. He was born without a father, a clear and undeniable sign of the absolute power of Allah. When he was still a newborn baby, Allah caused him to speak, not simply to amaze the people, but to protect the purity of Maryam and to remind mankind that real miracles are not confined by age or by timing. But the life of Isa did not end with that miracle. As he grew older, he became the prophet sent to Bani Israel, a community that had drifted far from the path of truth. Isa called them back to the light of Allah, healed the sick, raised the dead, and brought them proofs that could not be denied. Yet instead of listening, many people were afraid, jealous, and determined to erase him from the world. When the plots against Isa reached their peak, Bani Israel believed that if they could kill him, everything he had built would collapse. But Allah is the one who holds every plan, and he had prepared something they could never have anticipated. That night, when the enemies surrounded the place to carry out their scheme, Isa was commanded to go to a room with a window. Angel Jibril appeared, lifted him up through the small opening, and in that moment, the boundary between the earth and the sky felt as if it had been torn open. Isa was raised into the heavens while still alive, completely intact, untouched by death, without pain, without an ending. Meanwhile, Allah made a man from among the conspirators take on the face of Isa, to such an extent that every eye was deceived. They seized that man, dragged him away amid shouting and frenzy, convinced that they had caught Isa. They raised him onto the cross, tortured, and killed him, then proudly declared that they had killed Isa and had proven their victory. But that victory was empty, because they did not even realize that they had fallen into the very trap they devised for someone else. The Qur'an states very clearly that they did not kill Isa, and they did not crucify him. It was all an illusion that Allah placed before their eyes. That was the moment when history changed. While they believed they had ended his mission, Isa still lived, still remained under the protection of Allah, and still waited for the day he would return to complete the final chapter of his story. The return of Isa is not a legend embroidered by people. It is a promise confirmed by the Qur'an and hadith. When the final age arrives, when the world sinks into chaos and the deception of Dajjal overwhelms the conscience of mankind, Isa will return. He will descend at the white minaret to the east of Damascus during the dawn prayer, among rows of believers who are preparing to stand for worship. The light of 2 angels will surround him, and his arrival will tear apart the darkness that has settled over humanity. Isa will not bring a new religion, and he will not cancel what has already been revealed. He will live according to the law that the Prophet Muhammad brought. He will kill Dajjal, destroy every idol that is worshipped falsely, and restore justice that has long been trampled. The world at that time will witness an era in which peace is a reality, not a slogan. After fulfilling his mission, Isa will live as a human being. He will marry, have children, and then depart from this world through a natural death. When his body is carried to Jannat al-Baqi beside the Prophet Muhammad, that will be the final period at the end of a journey that has stretched over many millennia. What makes the story of Isa so profound is not only that he was raised into the heavens or that he will return. It lies in the way Allah shows humanity that time cannot touch those whom he chooses to protect. It lies in the fact that truth can be covered for a moment, yet it will be revealed at the exact time that Allah wills. Most importantly, it reminds us that there are moments in history when the world seems to be falling fully into the hands of darkness, while in reality, the light has been prepared long before, simply waiting for the right moment to appear. The story of Isa has not ended. It is only paused, and the day he returns will be one of the most important chapters in the history of humankind. Among the figures that Allah has preserved within the flow of time, Khidr is the one burdened with the greatest mystery. Isa was raised into the heavens. Ilyas left the world on a steed of light. Idris lives among the layers of the heavens. Each of these stories has clear events recorded about it. But with Khidr, his life is like the reflection of the moon on the surface of water. It is real, yet difficult to grasp. You can see it, but you cannot touch it. Khidr is not only a human being, not only a prophet, not only a wise sage. He is the embodiment of a type of knowledge that Allah grants only to those whom He selects. A type of knowledge that goes beyond all human thinking. A type of knowledge that, when viewed with ordinary eyes, looks completely wrong, yet when viewed by the light of Allah, is entirely correct. In the Qur'an, Allah refers to Khidr with a single description, a servant to whom He had granted knowledge from His own presence. That is all. There is no genealogy, no specific timeline, no hometown, no record of his age. This silence of the Qur'an is exactly what has made the life of Khidr one of the greatest mysteries of sacred history. The less people know about something, the more they feel drawn to it, and Khidr stands at the center of that mystery. The most famous story of Khidr begins with a conversation between Musa and Allah. When Musa was asked who was the most knowledgeable person in his time, Musa replied that it was himself. But Allah informed him that there was a servant of his who possessed knowledge beyond the scope of what Musa had been given. That man was at the place where two bodies of water meet. That was the moment when Musa decided to set out in search of Khidr, not because he lacked knowledge, but because he wanted to open his heart to depths that human understanding alone cannot reach. That journey was a test. Musa took a fish with him, and Allah told him that the place where the fish disappeared would be the place he would meet Khidr. The fish, even though it was already dead, leapt from the basket and made its way into the sea as if an unseen force was guiding it. When Musa finally realized what had happened, he turned back and found Khidr sitting alone, wrapped in a cloak that even the wind and the light seemed to gather around with respect. Khidr did not easily accept Musa as a companion. He knew that his knowledge, the knowledge Allah had given him, could not be understood with ordinary reasoning. He warned Musa that he would not be able to remain patient, that some actions would look clearly wrong outwardly, yet would be completely right according to a plan known only to Allah. But Musa, with the heart of a prophet, wanted to learn and to understand more about how Allah arranges all affairs. So they began a journey in which every step was a collision between human knowledge and knowledge from the heavenly realm. 3 events took place one after another, but their impact still reaches us today. Khidr damaged the boat of some poor people who had kindly allowed them to ride with them. He killed a child who had done nothing wrong. He rebuilt a wall in a town whose people had refused to welcome them. Each of these actions, in the eyes of Musa, was against justice. Yet when Khidr explained them, Musa understood that true justice does not lie only in what the eyes can see. The boat was damaged in order to protect it from being seized by a tyrant king. The child was killed so that his parents would be spared the heartbreak of watching him grow into a disbeliever who would pull them into sin. The wall was repaired so that 2 orphaned children would preserve the treasure that their righteous father had left hidden for them. What is striking is that Khidr only explained his actions at the moment when they had to part ways. His knowledge was not open to anyone, not even to Musa, until their journey had ended. This is a sign that the knowledge given to Khidr is not something that can be passed on instantly. It must be seen through the passage of time, through stillness, and through the will of Allah. Khidr does not appear only in the story of Musa. Many scholars narrate that he accompanied Dhu al-Qarnayn in his search for the spring of life. There are also traditions that state Khidr was the one who drank from that water, the water that grants the one who drinks from it the ability to remain alive until the day of judgment. Scholars continue to debate the authenticity of these narrations, but what is certain is that the image of Khidr has become a symbol of endurance and continuity. He appears in stories of people who were saved from accidents, of those who were lost and suddenly found their way, and of those who prayed in utter despair and then unexpectedly found guidance. No one knows where Khidr is now. Some scholars say he remains close to the sea. Some say he walks across deserts, and others believe that he lives in lands where people no longer dwell. Yet what truly matters is not where he is, but that he exists. His existence is a reminder that between the visible and the invisible worlds, there is always a silent bridge, where Allah places those he chooses in order to maintain the balance of humanity. Khidr is a secret that Allah has left within this world, not so that we may completely unravel it, but so that we may remember that there are levels of knowledge that go beyond everything the human eye can see. Ilyas is one of the prophets whose appearance in history is like a streak of blazing light cutting through a dark sky. During his time, the land of Sham, which had once witnessed the presence of many great prophets, sank into a very different kind of darkness, the darkness of worshipping the idol Baal. This was not only a deviation in belief, but also the collapse of self-respect, of moral values, and of the basic ability to recognize truth standing right in front of them. People erected massive statues, offered sacrifices, and were willing to give up their human dignity just to please what they believed to be a god. In that setting, Allah sent Ilyas, a man who carried within himself the purity of true faith and the power of a warning that came from the heavens. Ilyas did not use miracles to dominate people, and he did not use worldly power to threaten them. He brought only a simple yet powerful call: return to the one who created you. What seemed simple in words became a spark that ignited a storm of hatred. People trembled at the influence of Ilyas, because they knew that if they followed him, their entire structure of false belief and corrupted power would crumble. They did not oppose Ilyas because they thought he was untruthful. They opposed him because the truth he carried was too dangerous for those who had become comfortable living in lies. Plots against Ilyas began to spread. There were nights when he had to hide in mountain crevices. There were days when he had to leave behind entire towns that had once been the place where he taught. But what makes the story of Ilyas so different is that he never gave up. Even while being hunted down, he continued to warn his people that the worship of Baal would only lead them to destruction. He warned them of the consequences of rebelling against Allah and reminded them that every patch of earth beneath their feet was proof of the only power that could save them. Allah did not abandon Ilyas in the midst of that hostility. When the plan to kill him was on the verge of being carried out, Allah intervened in a way that human beings could never have imagined. According to many narrations, at the most intense moment, Allah raised Ilyas into the heavens while he was still alive, like a sacred flame pulled out of the grasp of those who were trying to extinguish it. Some scholars narrate that Ilyas left the earth on a horse enveloped in light, a mount that did not belong to this world. When he departed, it was as if the land and sky held their breath, because this was not a death, but a transfer into a different mode of existence, where time no longer holds the same meaning as it does in this lower world. One of the most astonishing stories about Ilyas is his meeting with the Prophet Muhammad in the desert. In an old narration, Anas ibn Malik recounts that while he and the Prophet were traveling through a barren land, they heard a strange voice calling out, a plea to be counted among the followers of the Prophet Muhammad. Following the Prophet's guidance, Anas traced the source of that voice and found an elderly man dressed in white, immersed in worship. When he learned that Anas was a companion of the Prophet, the old man requested that his greetings be conveyed to him. The meeting between the Prophet and Ilyas that followed was described by witnesses as filled with the solemnity of the heavens. When their conversation ended, food from paradise was placed before them, a sign that this meeting did not belong entirely to this world. At the end of that encounter, a horse of light descended. Ilyas mounted it and disappeared into the sky. This event, although discussed and analyzed in many ways, has remained in the collective memory of generations as a sign that Ilyas is not only a figure from a distant age, but a presence that continues. The Qur'an mentions his name twice, and in both cases, it emphasizes that he was a true prophet sent to a specific people. Those people did not follow him, yet their refusal did not diminish the value of the message he carried. Allah did not allow a truthful prophet to be killed by his enemies, and the raising of Ilyas into the heavens is proof of that. When we look back at the life of Ilyas, what truly makes us reflect is not only the way he was taken up to the sky, but the unshakable firmness of his faith. He stood before a nation drowning in sin, yet he never wavered. He is proof that in every era, the light of truth continues to exist, even when it is covered by layers of ignorance. His departure from the earth was not the end of his mission, but a sign that there are prophets whom Allah preserves for the critical moments when the world will need them the most. The story of Ilyas reminds us that true faith is not measured by numbers, but by steadfastness in loneliness. Sometimes Allah raises a person into the heavens not to remove him from this world, but to make him a living witness across dimensions that human eyes will never reach. Idris is one of those figures whose depth is difficult to fully capture, even in the pages of sacred history. If Isa is the proof of saving power, if Khidr is the symbol of heavenly knowledge, and if Ilyas is the blazing flame against false gods, then Idris is the root of human knowledge. He laid the first stones for civilization, for writing, for the sciences, yet he is also the one who crossed the line between life and death in a way that no one had ever experienced before. His life is not simply told as a chain of events, but as a reminder from Allah that those whom He chooses are never confined by the frameworks that human beings invent. Idris appeared at a very early time in human history, when the descendants of Adam had begun to split in two directions. One group preserved the light of correct worship, the other fell into the darkness of sin and devotion to powerless objects. In this setting, Allah chose Idris, a man whose steadfast character was matched by exceptional intelligence, to be the third prophet after Adam and Sheth. He did not only continue the faith of his forefathers, he opened new horizons, new fields that humanity had never yet entered. It is narrated that Idris was the first person to write with a pen. This sounds simple, but it was a decisive turning point for the development of humanity. Through writing, knowledge was no longer trapped in memory, but could be carried from one generation to the next. He then taught people astronomy, measurement, mathematics, and the art of sewing, foundational skills for building a functioning society. Idris was not only a prophet, he was a pioneer of civilization. What he brought was not only for his own community, but for the entire world that would come after him. Yet not long after Idris began his mission, his world faced a spreading darkness. The descendants of Qabil sank into sin, drank intoxicants, worshipped fire, and gave themselves to desires that rotted their society from within. Idris tried to guide them back to Allah, but most refused. As opposition grew more intense, Idris decided to leave Babylon, the land where he had lived and preached. And he led the believers who followed the light to another place, to the fertile lands near the Nile. That migration was not only an act of escape, it was a new beginning, an effort to build a new community upon faith and the knowledge Allah had granted. What makes Idris so remarkable is not only his intelligence, but his close connection to the angels. He did not see his life as a string of days to be filled with pleasure, but as a continuous opportunity to worship Allah and teach the truth. The angels, beings who never tire of worship, loved Idris to the extent that they visited him frequently. This is where one of the most profound stories about Idris begins, the story of how he was taken up into the heavens. One day, Idris confided in the angel of death, who appeared in human form by the command of Allah, that he wished to taste death, not out of fear or despair, but in order to feel for himself the reality of the transition that every soul must undergo. Allah allowed it, and the angel took his soul, then returned it. After that, Idris asked to see the hellfire and paradise, so that he could better understand the justice of Allah. That request was also granted. When Idris entered paradise, he said that he did not want to leave, not because of pleasure or comfort, but because in that place he could worship Allah without the limitations of the human body. Allah answered that wish with a decision that made Idris one of the four who remain alive among the heavens. Allah permitted Idris to stay in paradise. Idris did not die in the way others die. He moved into a different state of existence, the state of a devoted worshipper living among angels, untouched by time, age, or the rules of the physical world. During the night journey, when the Prophet Muhammad ascended through the heavens, he met Idris in the fourth heaven, confirming that Idris is still alive, still continuing the mission of a soul fully dedicated to its Lord. The most thought-provoking aspect of Idris's story is how Allah placed him at the border of two worlds, the material world where he taught and built knowledge, and the heavenly world where he worships. His life shows that knowledge does not stand alone. It always walks side by side with faith. A person who is learned but has no faith will soon lose his way, while a person who has faith but refuses to seek knowledge will struggle to truly understand the plan of Allah. Idris is the image of a person who is deep in intellect, firm in belief, and serene in submission to Allah. He was raised into the heavens not because he was unreal or beyond human, but because he was profoundly devoted. His continued existence to this day is proof that Allah preserves whomever He wills in ways that human beings cannot measure. The story of Idris is not only a chapter in religious history, it is a reminder that when knowledge is placed in its proper place, it can lift a human being to heights that sometimes only angels are thought to reach. The lesson for us today is to learn to see life with eyes that look beyond the limits of the present moment. Be patient when you face hardship, because the next page of your story may surprise you. Trust in the plan of Allah, even when you do not understand it right away. And nurture within yourself both knowledge and faith, because if either one is missing, you will lose the balance that Allah wants you to have. If you want to continue exploring the deeper meanings hidden behind sacred events, if you want to better understand the stories that shaped Islamic history in a completely fresh way, then join the Prophetic History Explained community to gain more valuable insights about the Quran, the prophets, and the spiritual journey of humanity. And remember to subscribe to the channel so that we can continue bringing you content that is profound, emotional, and full of discovery in the next videos.